Explorers, it's your adventure podcast hostess with the mostest, Katie Staples. I'm going to share my travel stories, tips, and tricks for exploring and creating unforgettable experiences and memories. Find me on Instagram at the.great.escape.podcast so you can follow along and I can hear from you. Last time in episode 24, we were hearing from my friend and colleague Abe Shreve all about his family's adventures in their vansion. And it left off with him talking about this crazy thing that happened on a long road trip that they took together. So here is the rest of that awesome story. Take it away, Abe.
This trip descended into such a comedy of errors. I couldn't even make it up. So let me just take you through a few of these things. Our whole theme was, all right, well, next, pivot. I started calling people to fix the van. I'm trying to find someone, and everyone's saying we can look at it in 3 weeks. I'm like, no good. I'm just circling, and I get all the way. I call a place in Maryland, and the guy says, I know what it's like to be traveling with a family, and we'll do everything we can to take care of you. And I said, great. That's all I needed. I'm going to have it brought to you. And so within an hour, that thing's loaded onto a flatbed. And now we've got to find our way to Baltimore. And we're in the West, and we don't ride in trains like they do in the East. And I thought, this will be great. We'll go on a train. So I booked this train. We go to sleep, wake up the next day. We're waiting for the train. We have taken just enough to get to Baltimore. And I've got an Airbnb in Baltimore. Train doesn't show up. It's an hour late. 2 hours late. Someone comes along and says the train broke down. We're going to put you on buses and send you to DC, and then you can get on another train back to Maryland. And our whole thing as a family was, okay, all right, I guess we're doing that now. And this spirit that I'm explaining, this idea of that didn't go the way I wanted, so I guess we'll just do this. This goes back to a time when my wife and I we were backpacking through Thailand, newly married. And everyone spoke good enough English except the government employees. We were on a bus going to Sukhothai, Siam's second capital city. And we've been on this bus for like 3 hours. And we both were kind of at the same time had the realization of, I have no idea if we're actually going to where we said we wanted to go. No clue. And I said to her, I'm not so sure we're going to where we plan to go. And she said, I have no idea. And both of us the thought was, well, wherever we go, we'll see that place. And so that was kind of the mission of, that's we've lived that a lot in our family, and especially on this trip. And so they put us on the bus. We get to DC. It's crowded. There's incredible traffic. It's the afternoon rush. Finally, we're at the train station. Finally, we get on our train, and we're laughing, and we're like, hey, all right, well, we're gonna get there. And we don't leave, and we still don't leave. And someone comes through and says there was a train accident and it involved a pedestrian, and we're grounded. We can't go until we're cleared. And we didn't laugh because someone was injured, but the message was, all right, well, we just have to adjust.
We're good at it at this point. We might as well just be flexible again.
I have a 3-year-old daughter that's with us, and we're having the time of our lives. And we get to the train station in Baltimore at like 1:30 in the morning. And there's hardly anyone in there. It's beautiful, by the way, these old historic buildings. And we are laughing so hard. We woke someone up that was sleeping on a bench, and they got mad at us, and that made us laugh harder. And so we go to the Airbnb. The next day, I reach out to see how, if they got the van. And what's happening is they're not communicating with me. So I send over 4 extra large pizzas from the family with the travel van. And so then the next morning I go there and I said, hey, this is who I am, this is who we are. And they said, did you send the pizza? I said, I sure did. And so they went and got someone. Well, whoever they assigned me to, I could tell wasn't going to be good at communication. And in the course of that time, the service manager had talked to me, and he could tell I was never angry, and I was letting him know, hey, the best thing you could do is just communicate with us because we're stuck here. He came out, and I learned one of the best lessons about customer service I've ever had. He came out and said, hey, I'm going to take this over. I'm going to keep in touch with you. Where are you headed next? He helped us get a van. They could help us rent a van. We rented this van. So now we're on our way down to Gettysburg. And what would happen over the next 5 weeks is he would call every other day and say, "Where are you now?" "Oh, we're in Ocean City, New Jersey." Or we would name the places and he would say, "Oh, sounds amazing. I'm calling to let you know I don't have an update since the last time we spoke, but I wanted you to know it's my priority. I'm thinking about you. We're working on it." Now, sometimes he did have an update, but I cannot stress how comforting it was to get an update where there was no update.
Hmm. At
We just
least
didn't have to
they weren't
wonder.
being ignored. At least they
Yeah.
were like, "Hey, we know you, but I have nothing to say to you."
Yeah.
So let me get this straight. The vansion is being worked on for this
Yeah.
whole time. So the
Yeah.
van that they got you, what was that van like?
It's a minivan. And we leave, they said probably 3 days. And it was 4 weeks. So we leave with 3 days worth of clothing. But there was this moment, we're driving to Gettysburg, and I look over and there's this field, some lush green field of something or other, kudzu or something that nobody likes, but it's full of fireflies. And my kids have never seen real fireflies. And I hit the brakes, and the whole family goes charging out into this field, catching fireflies. And I remember there was this, we go through some little teeny town, and there was like a little diner, and we come walking in the diner. It was like the old West where they're playing the piano, and then, the someone new walks in, and everyone stops and looks. That was like us. They're not used to seeing six people walk through like that. And we got to Gettysburg, and I'm checking us into a hotel, and I said to the lady, "We're excited to be here. We've been on a crazy adventure." And she said, "You have?" I said, "Yeah." And when something doesn't go right, we just say, "All right, next." And she said, "Yeah, well, I'm going to give you 2 rooms." And I said, "What?" And she said, "Yep." And my wife, this is so Teresa, "You don't have to." And I'm like, "Shh, shh," you know. And she literally gave us a second hotel room for no charge. We just kept going like this. We explored all over Gettysburg. I had I had a client, you might know Jeff Quinton, is one of my really close friends now, and Jeff's up in Ocean City, New Jersey, and kind of in that area. And I called Jeff and said, "I think we need a vacation from our vacation." And he said, "You get up here." And I went to the family and said, "All right, let's vote. If you want, we can go see Jeff Quinton in Ocean City and we can play on the beach and we'll do 4th of July on his big boat." And they were like, "Yeah."
Yeah, how
And
do you say no to that?
we just beelined it up there and spent days. We watched this 4th of July celebration in the bay between Ocean City and Atlantic City. Just jamming. He had the music up and we were just jamming. And he had this connection in Philly, which is where we went next, at the Union League. This is a members only hotel that goes back to Abraham Lincoln's presidency, and it espouses their mission is they espouse the teachings and beliefs of Abraham Lincoln. So we go. It is first class. Everything's included. All the meals. We can't go on the first floor because we don't have dress clothes. We had to go in the service entrance. And what was so funny is our whole thing was the Clampetts have come to the White House, y'all. And so they had these break rooms with incredible treats. And we just organized. We organized and we raided all 4 floors of break rooms. And we stayed up that night. I remember my wife and I, kind of the first moment we were sitting there just kind of catching our breath, and the kids are watching a movie. And, you know, I wouldn't trade that for all the money in the world. None of it. I'm sorry. I get emotional. I've been in menopause since Maddie was born. Um, now I'm 52, and 2 of my kids have moved out, and I think I thank the Lord above that we did these things. And that's why I say, if you really want to fulfill an amazing mission, someday has to become today. Figure out, how to do it. I told you we had to fly my oldest daughter home for soccer conditioning. I was fine if she quit the soccer team, but she was on a travel comp team and she was on playing for the high school, and it was a big deal to her at the time. And so we're up in British Columbia. That was one of her bucket lists. She wanted to drive the Sunshine Coast, which we did on Victoria Island. And so we we drive back down to Seattle and take her to the airport. And Ben Kenny.
Yeah.
Ben's a good friend. So we went to Bellingham and stayed with Ben, and we got to shoot guns. And then it was time to go back to Canada. And so this would be one thing if this was pre 9/11, but this is post 9/11, and I couldn't even tell you the town. We did a border crossing in some teeny little town at night in the rain, and no one was there. And we just drove in. No, we're not. I
At
mean, they
the
would have let us
border,
in.
just an open situation.
Just yeah, that it was closed.
And what year?
It wasn't really closed. There's just no one in the little shack. We drive into Canada, and Canada is not, I mean, we've traveled third world. We've been everywhere. Canada is not that, but it's different enough that I'm like, oh, I don't know. Does Walmart have the same policy in Canada? And it's raining and it's hard to see. And so we got to this one place that was the equivalent of like a Flying J truck stop, like a big truck stop. And I just went and asked someone behind the counter. I said, "Would it be all right if my family and I slept in the parking lot?" He's like, 100%. Everyone in Canada is so nice. You can ask for anything. All right, so we go to sleep. This is one of those magic moments, Katie. I wake up the next day and I kick the back door to the van open. Now I live in a ski town. I live in a little town called Ogden, Utah. We're 4,400 feet above sea level. I'm 20 minutes door to door from world-class skiing. I'm right on the mountains. But we start at 4,400 feet above sea level. I'm in a Canadian town that's like 10 feet above sea level. And when I kick the back doors of the van open, we were literally right at the foot of the Canadian Rockies, and they rose 14,000 feet straight up right in front of us. It was one of the most majestic things I've ever seen. And the whole family comes out rubbing the sleep out of their eyes, and we're just like, oh, and we're mountain people. We live in the mountains, but not like these. And we had some other plans, but the plan changed. And we said, all right, we're going to drive that way. And we ended up driving from BC over to Banff. And I remember there was this one place along the way that we found that was it wasn't really an RV park, but they just had some camping. It was someone's field. And we have this picture because we just stopped there and kind of walked around and ended up spending the night there. But it started raining again. And we're in the van playing card games on the bed in the back. And, you know, these are the moments I would give anything to go back to. Our coaching clients, this is a very serious gig and I take it seriously. So the reason that the Walmart thing is such an important part of our story is I had East Coast clients. So our first trip on the West Coast, I would kick the back door of the van open. I would sneak out at about 5:15, go into Walmart. I would go back to the home and garden section, make a little desk, set up my computer, my headset. I'd tether off of there. And I had 5 calls. And my goal was every call I would add a piece of office furniture. Sometimes I would add a picture. Sometimes I would add, when I was done, it looked like an office. And every time some Walmart employee would come around after a couple hours and they'd come up, excuse me. And I would cover up the mic on my headset and say, it's a business. I'm talking business. It's a business call. And they would always say, oh, so sorry. So sorry. So sorry. And then the kids would always come in. They knew when my first break was, and they'd come get me because we were going to relocate to a park or something. And they would come in, and the goal was they always wanted to see how I had set up my office space in Walmart.
That's amazing.
It was so fun.
Yeah, because if it's like 5 a.m., Pacific time, then you have people like you're getting ready to have the East
Yeah.
Coast calls. Oh
Yeah,
my
they're
God.
8 o'clock on the East Coast.
What I loved the most about all these stories is if you're going to be any kind of full-time or part-time or just for funsies traveler, whether you're in a van, whether you're in a Winnebago like me, whatever you're in, right? Whatever your vehicle, it pays to be one handy, right? So the fact that you were even going to add your own extra AC unit blows
Oh
my
yeah.
mind. Good for you. I have fixed many things, MacGyvered many things on the side of the road in my RVs. And then just the mentality of being okay, being flexible. My longest trip solo, just me and one dog, 60 days out west. And the first like 20 something days was pretty well planned. And then I said, let's maybe not book everything else just because you never know what's going to happen. And having the mentality of being okay, pivoting like that, especially in the face of adversity and something going wrong or breaking down, is huge for that lifestyle. And so that's a great thing to remind people is if you have to have this strict, rigid schedule, I mean, you did for work and you made it work. And more importantly,
I
you
just
were
had to be somewhere that I could set up.
sure.
That could be just almost any place.
Sure. Any place, yeah, any place with
There's
cell service.
there's a funny story. Jay Papasan interviewed me for the One Thing podcast, and I was in Crescent City, right on the border of Northern California and Oregon, like right there. I'm in Crescent City in Home Depot, and I'm back by the electrical because it was the only place I could find a solid cell service.
For the
So
One Thing
I stood
podcast, you
there and
were
he
in a
interviewed me
Home
on the One
Depot?
Thing. Yep. What I would say is, first of all, let's just say something bad happened. There was there was nowhere. I mean, there were times when we were, going through the Canadian Rockies, but we're on the highway. It's not like we're in some bear's gonna come up, tear the door off. I have been to those places, but this is not that. I mean, my thought is if we're traveling like this and if something happens and we have to buy pants and we can go buy pants, we're not really roughing it.
Right.
If someone's injured or we need a doctor in any city we go to, we can find medical help, we're okay. You know, one of the one of the cool things is when the van finally got fixed, we went to New York City and we'd kind of built this trip around my wife is a really talented performer and we love musicals. I love music. I'm a little more piggy than she is, but I love them because she loves them, and I get to be with her. And so we had bought tickets to see the original cast for a show called Dear Evan Hansen, which I don't know if anyone here has seen it, but it's really touching. It's based on a children's book, and it deals with everything from depression and suicide to families that are struggling, and it's just really incredible. Well, we arrange our travel to be there for that, and the main guy, his name's Ben Platt, and she wanted to see him, and it was the first time in the whole run that he had taken a vacation. And
Wow.
my daughter and my wife were just so destroyed until I said, ladies, we'll just come back and see it again. And it was this reminder of now, look, I recognize that we're very fortunate. Not everyone could do that. But when we were going through that whole thing, I remember I posted something on Facebook and somebody said, if you can solve your problem by writing a check, you don't have a trial, you have an expense. And I felt like this whole trip, I couldn't design a better thing to teach us as a family that, look, you got to find your happiness. Life is going to unfold in lots of ways you don't plan, and it's all right. Like there's a million things, 10 times worse than anything we're dealing with. Our van broke down and we have to stay now in Airbnbs instead of in the van. You kidding me? My wife loved that. On that trip, my daughter was learning to drive. Maddie spent part of her time learning to drive, driving a commercial sized cargo van in downtown New York City. And I remember, my wife was a little nervous about it. She's like, are you sure? And I'm like, are you kidding me? I want her for the rest of her life to be able to say, when I had my driver's permit and I was learning to drive, I drove on Fourth Avenue in downtown New York City, and these are times that we don't get back. And they don't have to be like that. Some of our favorite times in the van were little weekend getaways. We live in a pretty beautiful place. I had a friend that taught me many years ago. He said, we think we have to go everywhere. And he had coined this phrase, but I'm going to be a tourist in my own backyard. And so we do that all the time. We'll just go to the West Desert. I mean, there's no destination out there, but if I'm with them, we're going to have a good time. Kind of along this line, the kids got bigger and the boys got stinky. So we had to change, we had to sell the van and do something different. So we bought this little retro RV. We named it Gidget. It looks like a 1950s style. There's an RV brand called Retro, and it's the cutest little thing in the world. Last year, my wife has wanted to take us all to the Grand Canyon. So last year we had a record-breaking snow year, and we needed to escape the snow. We're skiers, by the way. We love the snow, but we needed to escape the cold and go somewhere warm. And so we drove to the Grand Canyon. And she found some farmer that lets you camp in his field for $10 a night because there was nothing available. We
Right.
dragged that thing all the way down there. It's like 13 hours by the time we get there. And we wake up the next morning at the Grand Canyon and it had snowed 4 inches.
I was about to say, you know that they get snow, right?
All of our water lines had frozen. And we just, and so it got us laughing. It got us laughing. And we went and saw the Grand Canyon. Then I was like, you guys want to go somewhere else? And we went to Page, Arizona, which there's nothing, particularly
I like
mesmerizing with Page
Paige.
except
There's
for it's got the longest slot canyon in the world.
yeah, Antelope Canyon's there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the lake, whatever's there.
Yeah. And they have a Walmart we could camp at.
I've been in that Walmart actually in Page,
Yeah.
Arizona.
I don't want to be a person that goes on an adventure. I want to be a person who has an insatiable core value of adventure.
Mm.
Because I think when you travel and you create new experiences and you do that with people that you love, even though it's a ton of work. I mean, my name's Abraham. You kidding me? At any moment, I was predisposed to want to sacrifice one of those kids, right? And and even still, I just find that when we get out somewhere, our heart beats slow and sync up a little bit. We get closer. People say, my family could never do that. It's probably because you say that. Never
What a
do that.
limiting belief you're putting on your family. Like you're the reason why they're not doing it for saying things like that.
And I do know families that they couldn't do this, and I would not recommend to them that they do it. Um, but we've put forth a lot of effort to be a family that gets up and gets out. And now that they're older, it crushes my soul a bit. They're doing everything we hope they are doing. They're going out and they're conquering the world and they're doing awesome stuff. We're not going to wait. We're not, we'll sit on the curb and cry when our last daughter, goes off to college. I'll cry an ocean of tears, and then we're going straight to the airport.
You made such a good point earlier about stop waiting. Someday needs to be today. And one of the saddest things I witnessed on my big RV trip about a year and a half ago, the first national park that we got to of the 12 for that trip was Carlsbad Caverns in New
Oh
Mexico.
yeah, we've been there.
And it was my first time there. So cool. I took the elevator down and then I hiked out, which is like the opposite direction of what most people do. And when I was down in the cavern, there are parts of the walkways that are, super wide and there's, the
Yeah.
railings to keep you on the path. Well, there's plenty of signs that say, hey, if you are in one of those mobile scooters or wheelchair, whatever, you will not be able to go on these parts because either the grade is too steep or the walkway is so narrow you won't be able to fit. And I saw this gentleman in a motorized wheelchair who I don't know, I could have made up this story in my mind. Who I'm believing, was probably his first time being able to see this. And I thought the caverns were just so amazing. And I've been to
Yeah.
Mammoth Cave. Carlsbad Caverns is its own thing, right?
Yeah.
And it just made me so sad for him that he couldn't explore all of the parts in the cavern because of the accessibility issue. And that's just the nature of the cavern, right? And I just imagine so many people that finally retire and get to travel, right? Because that's all that
Yeah.
they've done. Work, 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 then I'll retire and travel. First of all, are we even promised those days? One. Secondly, are you even promised the health to be able to enjoy it? Because I've seen so many people in their motorized scooters go to the edge of the Grand Canyon and they go, ooh, ah, and then they turn around and that's all they could do.
I've thought that and felt that before too, but I talked to a guy that changed that for me.
Okay.
He said, when I got to the point I couldn't walk, I would never be able to go out again. And he said, but I'm not going out quietly. and I'm going to drive this thing anywhere I can. It was pretty cool.
Well, I'm so happy that people do, right? Because they could just be back home, on the couch.
Yeah,
I
sure.
just think there is a part of the Grand Canyon. It's called Ooh Ah Point, right? And you take one of the trails down from the South Rim
Yeah,
and go
yeah, yeah,
deeper, and
yeah.
and that's one of my favorite parts of the Grand Canyon. And I mean, you got to be in some good shape to get back up that trail, right? And
Yep.
that's why when you said someday has to be today, that really resonates with me because I've seen so many people who were limited by the time they got out there.
Yeah.
And the whole point of this podcast is go do, stop, work, 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 and then live if you have the time and health to do it. It's work, live, work, live, work, live.
One of my favorite trips I've ever taken, my wife and I went to San Diego. We were at a very different time in life. Not that we sleep in a bed of Benjamins today, but we were poor back then. And we're there for I don't know, it was like our 10-year anniversary, some major milestone or something like this. And I don't know where I heard it, but I heard somewhere this great question, and we have used it for, better than a decade. And so we're at the San Diego Zoo, and I said to this lady, "Hey, what's an experience we absolutely have to have that I couldn't have without your help?" And the zookeeper said, "Are you looking for special treatment?" And Katie, when someone that has the capacity and ability to provide special treatment asks you if you're looking for special treatment, there's one answer, and it's yes. And she said, "Come with me." And we walked into the back where they feed the hippos, and we got to feed Momo the hippo by hand. And that thing, cranked its mouth open. And we have done that everywhere. And so sometimes our adventure is in a van for 6 weeks at a time to parts unknown. And sometimes it's in a very populated city where the objective is to see some things, to interact with some cool people, and to ask at least 5 people that question. What is something we absolutely have to experience that we couldn't experience without your help? And we have a list of experiences, unbelievable experiences we've had as a result of that question. So whatever your capacity is to get up and get out, I recommend you do it. Just make it happen. It's never going to be easier. But I don't see, like, there's no part of me that thinks, all right, I'm gonna get on that vacation and then I'll regret that I got there. And that sounds silly, but I am out of my mind busy right now. We have multiple businesses and it is a crazy time. So it's actually a sacrifice. But I'm always grateful I went, even though it was really hard. I never regret that. I do regret times that I don't go. So you just got to make it happen and go.
You never really regret the things you did do. You regret more of the things that you didn't do.
Yeah, I believe in that. My wife and I are going to go and hike the Camino de Santiago. It's the eclipse.
Oh,
And
that's cool.
yeah, it's 500 miles, and yeah, it's the Camino de Santiago. And my wife, it's her bucket list dream item. And in my family, if you say that out loud, I get a hold of that. I love to deliver that. And she's said this enough that we're gonna go do it.
Awesome. Okay,
So
cool.
I'm pretty pumped.
Cool. That will be the next episode that we have you on.
Oh yeah. Well, Katie, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you
Yes,
so
thank
much.
you so much. I thank you for your time and sharing all of your travel. It's fun to get a different perspective since I'm child free and you got to spend a lot of time with 4 children and a wife and yourself in one van. So that's
I love
awesome.
it so much. When the kids were younger, people would say, they're not gonna remember it. And both of our reaction was always, do you think we're going on this trip for them? Are you kidding me? Like, so we have traveled with them in one form or another since the day they couldn't even crawl. We got them out and got them going. They all started skiing when they were 2 years old. By the way, no one at 2 is good. It's all, it's me skiing backwards, bent over, holding the tips of their skis for half a run, and then it's hot cocoa and going to the bathroom and changing 1,000 diapers. But one day they wake up and they're throwing backflips off of cornices and they can get out of a helicopter with me in Valdez, and so every step of that journey is just awesome. And now I want nothing more than to be a granddad. So I tell Maddie, you owe me Come on. But she didn't see it that way. So I'm having to be
She's
patient.
23. You got to give her a couple more years.
I know. She says, Dad, every time you ask, I'm going to add 6 months. I'm like, I'm not saying a word. I'm not saying a word. I
That's
just
funny.
love, I'm happiest doing cool things with people I love.
And it sounds like it's a passion of yours. So you getting to share that passion with the
Oh,
people that mean
yeah.
the most to you is huge.
Yeah. 100%.
That's all for this episode of The Great Escape. I would love to hear from you. Would you like to be our next featured guest? Find me on Instagram at the.great.escape.podcast and send me a message. And don't forget to hit subscribe so that you can follow along and dream big for your journeys on The Great Escape. See you next time, adventurers.